We're going to recreate that exact kind of sound in GarageBand, so it works in Logic as well. So first of all, let's create a new project, and it's going to ask you to insert a new track as well. We're going to choose a MIDI track. By default, it's going to load up this electric piano, but what we're going to do is we're going to go to Synthesizer, Lead. There's a bunch of cool leads here, including this Box lead. So let me play a little bit of that, because it already sounds pretty cool. Right, let's edit this a little bit. So first of all, the mod effects. So this is basically going to control the formant filter. And we can amplify that by setting this to its fullest value. As far as the delay, nothing wrong with the delay. We actually want that on leads to make them sound more spacey. But since we're going to distort this, what you don't want to do is you don't want to have a delay already getting into your amp, right? So we're going to set this to 0, and then we're going to use a separate delay after the distortion has been applied. This is key. What else? We can edit the controls here. These are fine for the most part. What I would do is I would reduce the release, because, you know, this kind of sound does not have any clicks and pops, even with this short a release. So we don't want it to be, you know, longer than it needs to be. So that's it as far as our sampler here. Now, if we click on plugins, as you can see, we have some extra slots after Alchemy. And so one of those we're gonna use the amp designer on, right? Because we're gonna treat this like a knee guitar, so we need an amp. And the one that I found here to work particularly well for the sound that we want is the high octane kind of amp. Now you might be tempted to crank the gain up to its fullest value. I find that that doesn't really take the sound more into the direction we want to give it. It really just makes it a little dirtier. And this might seem kind of counterintuitive, but actually I would set this to 0, right? Because this amp is very aggressive, and the lowest setting already imparts a very specific kind of distorted sound. As far as the EQ, I'm just gonna basically neutralize this. We are going to use some EQ, but we want a more specific kind of fully parametric EQ. These are just kind of broad EQ strokes. We don't need that. Reverb, we're going to set to off. Effects are already off. Presence and master we can leave as they are. The ribbon mic here, we can keep that. It's a good thing that it is positioned far away from the cone, because that is going to reduce the bass it picks up. And this is not a bass sound, so we don't really need all that bass. What we can do is we can move it a little to the side, like here, because that is going to tame those harsher frequencies a little bit. It's going to sound less harsh. So that's the way I like it. Now, we could leave it at this and maybe apply a delay, but if we really want to treat this like a guitar sound, what we want to do is we want to implement an effects loop. And basically what that means is, if you have a look at our amp rig here, we can apply pedals before the amp head. These would be kind of distortion, EQ, compression pedals. But as I told you time and time again, we don't want modulation and time-based effects there, because otherwise our delay taps, for instance, they're going to be affected by the distortion. It's going to muddy things up. So really what we want to do is we want to place those delay or reverb pedals in between our amp head and the cab. Now, it might seem like an impossible task, because, you know, there's no plugins you can add here, right? But what you can do is you can set the cabinet to direct, so this is going to bypass the cab. Then you can use a second instance of Amp Designer right here. Again, we're going to choose the same preset. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the clean transparent preamp here. Everything, as you can see, is set to neutral. If not, you can just, you know, hold Control and double click like this. And this basically is just a pass-through. This is not going to change your sound in any way. So it goes straight to the cabinet. And again, let's move the ribbon mic a little to the side. And so basically what that allows us to do is to have our amp head on this instance of the amp designer Leave a space for any pedals we want to use, and then have the cabinet on a separate instance. So right here is our effects loop, and you could use, you know, GarageBand's own delay plugins here, but you know, why not use the pedal board, right? Let's go guitar all the way, and I'm gonna choose delay here, and we have two options in my opinion. We have this one. This one is pretty cool because it has a flutter option, and what that does is it changes the pitch of your sound over time, right? So that will help separate the straight direct signal from the delayed signal. I think this is great for more vintage kind of tones. This lead we have, it is, you know, pretty modern. And so what I like to use here is just the blue echo, because the way it changes the delay tabs is it filters them, right? So let me show you what I mean. Play a note or two. Right? As you can hear, the sound, the delay tabs are already pretty muffled. There's a kind of high cut filter on them. And we have an extra tone control here. And if we set this, you know, this was on the off position. So even on the off position, it cuts away the highs. Meaning that if we also set this to low, we can also cut the lows, and then it sounds something like this. I think that's a really nice delay tail there. Muffled, so it doesn't get in the way of your direct signal, but it also loses the highs and progressively. And so it has a kind of varying sound, which adds depth and modulation as well. As far as the time, what I like to do is I like to sync this to my project BPM, right? And I want to set this to something like 1/8 note with a dot. Because if you set this to, you know, regular values like 1/8 or 1/16, it's going to overlap with the notes you play. If you set it to dot, it's going to kind of play in between those notes. And that kind of makes it so that those two signals, the direct one and the delayed one, don't get into each other's way. As far as repeats, I think 90% is more than sufficient. And the mix, let's crank this up a little more. Let's go to maybe 40-ish %, right? Let's hear what that sounds like. Yeah, that's nice. I like that. One more thing I would like to do here. As you can see, we have one more slot here. And if you just click on EQ, it's going to show you an EQ, and it's going to populate that slot with the EQ. And it's pretty nice because you can open up the interface like this. You can have it on a floating window, or you can just click the EQ pane here and have it docked here, which I like very much. And so really, this sound is special in that it has a formant filter, so it's going to emphasize different frequencies in time. But there are a couple, or maybe one, kind of fixed resonance, which I find a little annoying. Maybe we've introduced that with distortion, and so it's time to get rid of it. And I've already kind of done the sweep for you. The culprit is 1560 Hertz. So what we want to do is we want to set a very narrow Q here so that we can just target that frequency kind of surgically. Let's set this to 1560. There it is. And let me boost the gain so you can hear what I mean. Right? Very annoying. So I'm going to turn that all the way down. Let's say -18. And now it should sound a lot cleaner. Yeah, I like that. And so, you know, there you have it. That's the sound that you heard me play at the beginning of this tutorial. You can easily recreate it following these steps in GarageBand and in Logic as well. If this was helpful to you, leave a comment, leave a like, maybe even subscribe. And if you want to support what I'm doing here, I got memberships. Just click on the join button to see all the details, and then you can decide to go ahead or not. And, you know, a little further down below, we have some t-shirts, some merch as well. Maybe have a look, see if there's anything you like. Right, that's it from me. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video next week. Take care.